What if growing up doesn't mean getting more serious, but getting more playful, more honest, and more yourself? Welcome back to Category of One, your host, Perez. And today I'm sitting down with someone who has shaped not just my entrepreneurial journey, but the way I think about purpose, creativity, and impact, Yanik Silver. Yanik is a visionary entrepreneur, the founder of Maverick 1000, author of Evolved Enterprise, and creator of the Cosmic Journal. But titles aside, what he really does is blend strategy with soul. He spent decades helping entrepreneurs build businesses at the intersection of purpose, profit, and play without losing their inner child. We talk creativity, identity, and why play might be the most underrated leadership skill there is. Yanik is a true category of one because you can't separate who he is from what he builds. You're not going to want to miss this one. Let's dive right in. Do you think that you've finally grown up, or do you still think you're a kid with all this expertise, wisdom, and impact?
Well, technically, I'm an elder, according to the Mayan elder that I work with, because I just turned 52. 52 years is the first time that actually these two Mayan calendars sync, this 365-day calendar and a 260-day calendar. So it's the first time ever that it syncs, because now you've experienced every energy of every day. I don't know. I feel like I don't think I ever want to grow up. And that feels way too adult and serious. So I do feel like I really do cultivate my inner child a lot and bring them along and even more so lately in the last couple of years, like even more like allowing them to play. But I think it's like integrating all parts of ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think that's one of the things that you've probably taught me over the years is to kind of always tap back into that inner child. I think there might have been pockets where I felt like I needed to grow up or be like an adult, and I was like, what are we doing?
Didn't you, I thought, didn't you put like baby powder in your hair way back when you're like early branding days to make yourself look older? Am I making that up?
I think you made that up. I might
Okay.
have. I mean, I definitely was critiqued for not having enough white hair.
Okay, that's what it was.
You're still always a kid. That's what I love about you, dude. So like, but let me go deeper on that. If there was one word that we could use to describe younger Yanik, like pre-internet marketing days, what's the word that you would assign yourself then versus now?
It was different. I always felt very, very different. I always felt different. And it was actually when I was about 17 that I first had the words that kind of helped give me some words to what I was feeling inside. And it was Earl Nightingale. I would listen to like Earl Nightingale tapes in my car. And a lot of times he would talk about like, if you didn't know which way to go, just go the opposite direction of most people, because they're usually going the wrong direction. So, you can decide to be a leader. And then this whole idea of like, becoming an expert if you studied for 2 hours a day on a subject, and then a world-class expert if you studied for 2 hours a day, or 1 hour a day, sorry, for 5 years. And I just really took that to heart. But this idea of being different for sure, like really stuck with me. Like I would be in a lot of different, I don't know, groups or cliques or whatever, but I was never like deep into them.
Like friendship groups, you mean? Or like almost
Friendship
like
groups
band or group?
yeah, athlete, exactly. So I played pretty high level ice hockey, and then like, we'd play travel hockey, and my buddies on the team would get in the car with me. We'd go on a road trip, and then they were like, "What are all these tapes on the floor?" And they're like, Earl Nightingale and I don't know, Ted Nicholas or Jim Rohn or
Okay.
and I'm like, don't worry, you're not gonna like these. And so like I was always like in these different worlds. So I definitely always felt different. And believe it or not, I always felt like very, very different, and felt like I came here to Earth for a very particular reason. And I think we're seeing this right now in this unique time that we're in.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll go there at some point too.
We could totally go. Why don't we
Yeah.
double click on that? Is there something that's coming up for you as it relates to the time that we're in right now?
Yeah, and it goes back to kind of this Mayan calendar that I've been very connected to. So back in 2011, 2010, maybe, like I started getting really intrigued by the Mayan calendar. And so as a kid, I was a weird kid. So as I said, different. And like when I was like 13, I was really into like sacred sites and the pyramids and all sorts of ancient cultures. But I put that away for a long time as I got into the entrepreneur business world. At some point, I'm like, this is not working anymore. And I asked myself a really simple question, which is, am I happy? Would I be happy doing what I'm doing 10 years from now? And that's where Maverick was born, which is this idea of bringing together amazing entrepreneurs and this connection of like growth, impact, and fun. And at one point, we would do an annual summit in December, and it was usually the first week in December. And so as I got really interested in this whole Mayan energies,
And
I'm
real
like,
quick, before you
yeah,
go on, for people who aren't grounded in, when you say Mayan calendar, like, is there like a plain English way that you can kind of explain that for people?
yeah. I mean, there's a couple. So Mayans kept track of 13 different calendars,
Okay.
and they were tracking everything from, like I said, that 260-day calendar, which is called the Sulcan, to the largest calendar I think is 5,920 years. And so it was, some pretty big movements of time. And then they also really looked at time as cyclical.
Mm.
In the Western world, we kind of look at time as very linear, but cyclical is really the way time works, especially if you think about, a lot of us have seen like the golden age or heard of the golden age, which is, I think Greek or Roman. The easiest way for me to describe these big periods of time is, imagine like day, right? There's 12 hours a day, typically 12 hours a night. Not exactly, but approximately, depending on the time of year. It's not like, well, we just went through winter, we're never having winter again. But it's a cycle. And these big periods of time that the minds are tracking were connected to these big periods of darkness and big periods of light. And that's what, I think we're all really experiencing and feeling. Like, if you think about the last 10 years, 15 years, how many conversations are we having now about consciousness or meditation or something else that really wasn't a conversation in the groups that I was in, and I was in a lot of different groups. And so I think you're seeing that. But this period is so like 2012 was the end of this one mind cycle, and the media really blew it out of proportion to try and say, this is the end of the world, and this is, this thing happening. But really it was like a odometer, like a odometer clicking over, and it clicked over to, I forget what it's called, but it went to 13.0000. So they had these big, vast periods of time that they're tracking. It wasn't a light switch moment of like, we're entering this amazing era of higher consciousness, but it was a big demarcation point. I had brought our Maverick group there. Sophia and the rest of our team thought I was completely crazy, who runs our events and experiences. And they're like, that's 4 days before Christmas. There's no way we should be there. And I'm like, no, let's just try it, because I think there's something magical there. And then, just magic and synchronicity, we were able to actually spend the night in a Mayan village. It was the first time
Wow.
that anyone had spent a night in a group had spent the night there in this Mayan village, including a temescal, which is like a sweat lodge. And you're going into the womb of the earth, is the way that they would describe it.
Mhm.
And completely dark. It's very, very, very low like that, and hard to breathe. And then we came out at exactly midnight on the solstice. So it was like, to me, synchronicities are my love language, and I think it's like really powerful when you get these confirmations via synchronicities coming out exactly at midnight on the solstice. I was like, okay, this is really showing what we need to be doing, especially with these entrepreneurs, is really helping nudge their consciousness and transform them deeply. And so, going back, like right now, this big time period. So from that moment, it's been 13 years to where we are right now. And so Mayans also had a 52-year calendar, which tracked along with the Pleiades. And they said all their wisdom came from the Pleiades, these 4 jaguar beings. And so 52 divided by 4 is 13. And the way my Mayan teacher describes it right now is there's been 13 years of seed planting for a new vision of the earth, or a new world that we all believe is possible. And this next 13 years are the sprouts coming to fruition.
So, but wait, where are we in the 13? Are we at
We're at the end of this first 13-year cycle from 2012. We're just about to, and December 21st will be the end of that 13-year cycle. And so, if you look back, like over 13 years, a lot has
a
changed.
lot? Yeah.
And this next 13 years is these sprouts that are going to be coming up from really people. This is what I get excited by. Is I was thinking about it this morning, like, I don't know, 25 years at least of being an entrepreneur, and the relationships that I've had over 25 years, and then seeing people, some people dip in and out of my periphery, some I've been with for a long time, but just seeing them on their journey, like, as a microcosm of it, like, you've been on an amazing journey.
Yeah.
And then it's like people showing up this goes back to my vision I've had for a long time, about 13 years of 1,000 suns lighting 1,000 suns. If there was going to be a bet of how long it took me to say those words, I don't know if we're over or under that time period, but I always talk about it because it is so powerful as a. It's not just a metaphor, but as I'm talking about you, Ree, but then really everyone. Like as you light your own sun fully, then what's the sun do? It shines in all directions. Like it doesn't decide, well, I'm not going to shine on South Dakota today, or I'm not going to shine on this particular caterpillar or whatever it is. It shines everywhere. And as these multidimensional beings that we are, we start radiating fully as our sun is lit. And then it's planting seeds, which are the ways that we want to just inspire other people, or it could be education. This podcast is an example of a seed being planted.
That's right. Yeah.
Media, content, art, even. And then the suns are the community that you want to curate in some way, or transformative work to help other leaders, visionaries, creators. So how do we light other suns, like empower and multiply them? And then those suns nourish the seeds and out come blooms, and the blooms are joint projects and opportunities. So that's what I see as this, grand vision of how do we bring light to every industry, category, sector, organization in the world. And a lot of people go through that journey of like, what is the greatest leverage that I can have in the world? And continuing to, I don't know, reinvent is too, I think that's too small of a word. But they're,
Re-envision.
yeah, maybe. Yeah. Yeah. We're going to keep using rewords. I look at the spiral, right? Like this continual spiral, and you have to, yeah, and you have to give up a certain part of your identity to move up that next higher octave in some way, and it feels like you might even be going backwards in some directions. But if you allow yourself to go through that, you're going to have this next higher level, and then also by teaching or by thinking about, okay, where was I 5 years ago or 10 years ago or whatever it is, and how do I pull up my other me's or you's, whatever it is, then that's also lighting suns in that own way, and it opens up space for you to continue evolving.
So I'm curious then, because I mean, I've related to you always as a category of one, but I like to ask every person I'm interviewing, like, what does being a category of one brand mean to you? What are some of the ways that you see this showing up in brands or in businesses?
I think there's that story of the golden Buddha, and I'm going to get it wrong, but you can fact check me somewhere. But it was like
We'll fact check
this
this.
big clay Buddha that got lost through history, and then like some monk was cleaning it. Sorry about the dog again. And some monk was cleaning it, and it's like, oh shoot, I broke this Buddha. And then it's like, oh, there's a little glimmer of gold in here. And then it was like, and then it's like, I think it's actually gold. And they started like chipping away and chipping away. And it was like, oh my God, it's an entire golden Buddha. And it was lost throughout history because at one point there's some invading army that came in, and the monks were like, we need to hide this beautiful piece that we have. And so they covered it with clay.
Okay.
And then all the monks were killed, I think, or something like that. And so this thing was just kept being moved along, and it was just this big clay Buddha. And I see that as ourselves, right? The more we can chip away at what we're not, then we become this golden expression of who we are. So let's just go back to the terminology I like to use, right? A being of 1,000 suns, but the fully illuminated being, then you can't help be a category of one.
Yeah.
And that comes from just being that fullest expression of who you are, and that's going to be a unique thing.
I like that. I mean, it reminds me of the other example of like Michelangelo, right? Chipping away everything that's not.
Right.
If we stay on the sun analogy, right? It's almost like, hey, I'm actually one of those 1,000 suns. It's almost like, I think the earlier version of me at this point, this would have been what, I don't know, 14 years ago. It's almost like you allowed the sun, like taking away the things that might have darkened or blocked the sun from coming out of fully me, and like chipping that away and allowing more sun to shine. And like my friends call it, like, oh, you're just taking up more space.
Maybe this comes with a little bit of age, or just doing some of the looking at things that we might not want to look at. Could be the shadow work, could be just really diving deep into who we are. But as you become more comfortable in who you truly are, and not trying to fit into a mold that, or a story maybe that your parents wanted you to be, or your friends or society or whatever it is. And it's hard because we get all these messages all the time. And then it's also like, I think that one of the ways I look at it is like, like who's like one of your biggest heroes? And so that's, it's a question that I ask a lot, and I love it. And it's like, it could be a real person, a fictional person, a person that's passed, whatever it is, and that gives you a clue to it. Like recently, it's been Jim Henson for me. And then you look at the attributes of that person or character, and then at your highest level, that's that golden shadow of who you are as well. But if I just tried to be Jim Henson or Richard Branson or whoever, then I wouldn't really be myself. I wouldn't be a full version of Yanik. Now we can have these, I don't know, these signposts or aspects, because they are attractive to us in some way, and there's a reason like that they're attractive, and it's because at your highest self you have a lot of those same characteristics. You also have your own unique expression. So the more you can hone that unique expression, and a lot of that can come from like what makes you weird. And by the way, I love the word weird. Like, I started as a copywriter, so words are so important to me, and weird comes from like Middle English, from like the in hundreds or something like that, and it's WYRD, and it's connected to something like fate of destiny, or so it's like from the Weird Sisters.
Yeah.
But like weird has become this like negative connotation, but like what how do we follow our true fate? And then also like what would you just do for yourself, like in this idea of like an audience of one, and like what would you do just for yourself? And so you start combining, like I really think that branding of a brand of one is really about combining different things that become this unique expression of only who you could be.
I think one of the reasons why me personally first resonated with category one is because I was in my rebranding process. So you've known me when I was running an agency, branding for the people. And then I went through this inner process of like, what is this next version of me? And then when I landed at category of one, I was like, that's me. Because using your example, I didn't necessarily have one particular role model that I looked up to in all the things. I've had like different groups of people that inspired me in different aspects. And then I like this, I like that, I like this.
The other thing that's really helped me a lot is I believe that we're all creative. Many times we might not think that we're creative, and it's going to be different in whatever way it is. So for me, it's been my art. Like as a kid, I wanted to be a professional hockey player, and then a cartoonist in the off season was my plan. And I did not make the NHL. We still play men's league, beer league hockey, but and then my art like really fell off. Like my parents saw my talent and they put me into a fine arts program as a kid, but I did not want to draw still life, so I was like a I was a art school dropout, and then I put it away for a long, long time. And then in my journals, I started drawing again, and then in my one book that I wrote maybe 7, 8 years ago now, I was on deadline, and I'm like, I feel like I put my whole soul into this, but it's not quite there. And I just got this surge of inspiration. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to add my own doodles to it. And then I was up till like 5 o'clock in the morning drawing. And I'm like, okay, now it feels really complete. And that's where Evolved Enterprise was born. And then recently, the last couple of years, what started off as just an experiment for myself was I saw this art project, this art challenge of doing 100 days of art every single day. And I'm like, "Oh, that's a lot. I don't know if I wanna do that." But I love that muscle of, like, a commitment, and then you follow that commitment, and so I'm like, "Alright, well, I'm gonna I'm gonna try this." And so I took a little moleskin journal. Instead of 100, I did 108 because it has, more meaning for me in these different wisdom traditions. And so I had little 108 check boxes at the front of it. I'm like, "Alright, what am I gonna do? I love journaling, so I'm gonna and I love doodling. I'm gonna combine it together. I'm gonna draw a page every single day."
Yeah.
And it was just like so like I was so lit up by it, and I had no idea what I was gonna do with it. There was no like big plan. It's just like I wanna create something every single day. And then after day like 60 or so, I started working like an oracle. I'm like, oh, this is really cool. I'd pop it open and have a message for me.
Yeah.
And then I finished it. I'd carry it around. I'd be like, here, check this out. And they'd be like, oh, that's nice. And then one of my friends is like, I'm gonna publish this. Like, this is really cool.
And
So
then it
then I
became the
got
Cosmic Journal.
yeah, that's where the Cosmic Journal, 108 days of journaling like this, where every single page was like a doodle, and then there's like a spot, like that. And then there'd be a spot that people would add their own stuff. So it was really amazing to have that project come together. And then it turned into a published work from Hay House, and then a set of cards. And now there's like just even more stuff that's coming out of it with the art. And I never expected it, but it's just so much fun.
Put up the book so that people can see how thick.
Well, there's like a small,
That's a
there's
journal.
888 editions of this one, and then this is the Hay House version.
But one of the questions I wanted to ask you from one creative to another, and to maybe to inspire other people, because you had said that everyone has some creativity in them. And maybe people don't know that they have access to it. So, what have you found to be one of the most profound creative tools, whether it's writing with your left hand or whatever? Do you have your go-to creative tools that you like to offer up?
Yeah, a couple for sure. And then I also want to circle back to what you said about it being a commercial venture. And
Yeah.
I think that can sometimes kill the creativity, especially if you do it too early.
Yeah.
And so I experienced that with like the Cosmic Journal, where it's just for me, it was a project just for me. And then it, turned into a published work,
That's right.
and then, a set of Oracle cards and so forth. And then I wanted to recreate some of that magic. And I love this idea of like being prolific, not necessarily perfect. And so, I love this idea of like one creative thing a day, and trying to do that. Not, trying, I don't even like that word trying, but I like creating these experiments for yourself. And I like, it's like, all right, there's a set time and an end time. And you're like, all right, do I want to add more of this into my world? And that experiment that I had was a pretty long one. It was 108 days. And at the end of it, I was like, wow, this is great. So then, you had that saying, you can't step into the same river twice. And so one of my friends is like kind of challenging me. He's like, well, you loved it. Why don't you just do, and I wanted to like kind of start growing a following again. He's like, why don't you just do on Twitter, publish for 111 days, use your number every day, a drawing. You're going to draw something and then publish it. And I'm like, okay, fine. And I committed to it and I did it, but I didn't love it as much because I had this little critic that lived on my shoulder that was like, that's a little weird. You sure you want to put that out there? Or, is this even good enough? And that is a great tool for creatives, is like and when I taught copywriting, which is a creative act, is like, you can't edit and write at the same time, or create and edit at the same time. And a lot of times we want to create at the same time. We're like, oh no, and keep editing. You have to like, I would have multiple passes that I would go through projects. So the first pass is just like, put everything out there. And also, if you can start from a place of high energy, passion, filled with love or gratitude, whatever it is, like that's even better. And just write or create with no sort of rules, but just put it all out there. And then you're using a different editing part, like a different part of your brain to edit later.
I didn't realize that. And I think that's what tripped me up when I wrote my book. I was like trying to edit it and trying to get it perfect.
Yeah. And also, like, I think that commercialization is also an editing in a way, because it's like,
Yeah.
What's the value of this? What can I charge for this? Where am I going to sell it? So it's a different aspect.
Yeah.
And it's still important, and sometimes, but it's not the most important, especially.
But it's not the starting point, is what I'm hearing.
No, you can always edit something, but you can't take something that's pretty good and make it even better. Like I think you have to start with that energy of the passion, and wherever you're inspired. And again, I love words, right? Like inspire means that you're breathing in and enthusiasm, like you have God within. Like, so like using that enthusiasm or connecting to that enthusiasm is where we're really creating from. And then you can edit.
Wait, just real quick. I just had a moment because I was thinking about your 1,000 suns lighting 1,000 suns. I'm thinking about our synchronicity in terms of like how we got connected, and just even full circle coming around here. And then you brought up the word inspire. When I work with brands, I come up with like their brand idea or their brand promise.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to create one for myself when I left the corporate world, and I created branding for the people. My brand promise is very similar to yours in a way, conceptually. And it was to inspire people to inspire other people. Well, if I can inspire these entrepreneurs to build better brands, then those brands were going to go out and inspire other people.
Yes, there's ripples of
That's
I call it these ripples of impact, the ROI, right? It's like these ever-growing ripples. And I do want to put a distinction that I don't think it's like my vision of the 1,000 suns. Like, I really want it to be everyone, whatever words they use, but it's like And again, I've gotten synchronistic encouragement that this is exactly right, because many years after having that vision in the Bhagavad Gita, one of the most, all the spiritual texts, there's a passage that says, if 1,000 suns were to rise all at the same time, its beauty and splendor would resemble that of the Supreme Spirit. I'm like, oh,
I didn't know that it came from the original Bhagavad Gita.
that's not where it came from for me, but many years after I had that idea from my 111-year-old self that came in, I got that confirmation reading that. And then, just recently, the last couple of years, I can't remember, were you with us in Costa Rica when we did for 2020?
I was not.
Well, we had our first cacao ceremony on January 11th, and it was 111. And part of this story of cacao from the Bribri tribe, which is one of the indigenous tribes in Costa Rica, they had, the way that facilitator shared the story was about this being, this sloth that created the universe and this whole thing, and then turned itself into an ugly old man to go visit the cacao sisters, but then transformed itself into a being of 1,000 suns. And it was like, just again, like a huge nudge of like, okay, like pay attention here. And cacao has been like one of my greatest allies and teachers in this whole journey. When I had those 111 days where I did it every day on Twitter, I had the little critic, over my shoulder. So I did it. And I'm like, and then I stopped doing the creative act every day. And I'm like, I was much happier when I was having a creative act every day. And so I've gone back now, same thing. Like every day I'm doing a page in a journal, no matter what. Some days are really, really, really good. And some days are like, whatever. But I'd rather be prolific than perfect. And now I've also expanded how long I have before I publish. So then I don't have to publish that day.
Right.
So now I have like 150 or 200 of them sort of in the bank, and I can decide. And so that's become this thing called 1,000 Sun Sparks, which are every single day I'm putting out a doodle. It's not really a doodle, but it's something that's that creative act. And so every day, and now I have that leeway of being like, all right, I can do stuff just for myself, and I don't have to worry that it could be too weird or too whatever. But more times than not, it turns out into something really cool, but I don't have that pressure.
Yeah, that's been quite the journey for me too, even over the past several years, is really dropping more into like my heart and into my body and listening to my body.
We have so many tools, but we don't know always how to harness them, because we're number two, we're like, we have this thing that we're like, oh, and like the more you can get away from that, at least some of the time, then you're going to listen to the stuff that's more subtle. That's not going to come in. The creativity is going to come from subtle places. It's not going to be more whispers than it is shouts. Though sometimes it comes as a big bonk on the head in some way. But if you're not allowing yourself that time for stillness, whatever the practice is that you want to cultivate, I think is really powerful. Journaling is one of those practices for me, meditation, whatever it is. But it's like, you really do breath work. Like, you want to find those practices that can help bring you back to your center, like you said, your heart, your body, and then just allow that wisdom to also be taken into account, because it is real wisdom.
I learned recently that, because I did this somatic coaching training course once, it was my first time, and I learned that 80% of our wisdom comes from our body. It causes me to think about what I put in and on my body even more, so that I can have a strong communication, being able to listen to my body. Because maybe my body's telling me I'm in pain, or I'm hurt, or I need attention, or I need more water, right? That was a big mindset shift for me, rather than thinking, to think it out.
Our brains and our minds are beautiful, parts of our being. But I talk a lot around how do we connect our head, which is our business side or marketing side, with our heart, which is the impact we want to make in the world, and then our higher purpose, like, why are we here?
Yeah.
And, adding in that happy inner child, like, so all of it together is really that, bring that into alignment.
Love it.
And our body has a lot of wisdom for sure. And then also the emotions and feelings. And that's, also been a journey for me of feeling more, or being more aware of what those feelings are. And then also like being okay, like, all right, well, I'm depressed now. That's a message too. It could be a fleeting message, or it could be an ongoing one. And that depression is where that first original big question came from, which was, am I happy? Would I be happy doing what I'm doing 10 years from now? And the answer in my journal was no, I'm not happy. But outside looking in, everything was great. I was making a lot of money, driving the hot sports car, but it really took the deep decision to be like, no, there's something else here. Especially as entrepreneurs, where maybe you achieve what you wanted to achieve, or you sold a company, or whatever the goal was originally, and then it's like, all right, now what? And it's really easy to go back into like, oh, well, when I make $10 million or I sell it for 100 million or whatever the next goal is, but it just becomes this little hamster wheel.
All the Maverick activities and that you do, I believe, has already lit more than 1,000 suns. I guess my question is, now what?
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that about the 1,000 suns already. I actually, for a while, I had this very heavy feeling of like carrying a lot of this weight on my shoulders of like, all right, well, how many are there and have they done it? And it was in a breathwork session that I just got completely free of and I had this feeling of like, all right, it's already done. And now it's just like bringing us all together. So I think that's this next stage as well, is like, let's bring us all together. Like, when I talk to my friends, when I just explain like at the highest level, and I've told you this before too, I'm like, I just want to play with my friends that I love and work on ideas that can make a difference in the world. And that's all I want to do. But if I was going to describe this, aspect of category 1 for me right now, it'd be, I think this next stage is really about being a galactic human with wings. Like, how do I, bring all of myself, that full expression, activate all my energy centers, and then how do we have these wings that appear? And then that is a being of 1,000 suns that just can't help but radiate in all directions.
Well, I am blessed and honored for you to just spend some time with me and share a little bit about who you are and the way that you think, and just drop in on some cool creative tools and tips. And looking forward to you radiating even more, Yanik. You're a very special human in my life. I appreciate you. And if people want to find out about you and all the things you're up to, where should we send them to?
1000sunsparks.com. So the number 1,000. Check out my daily doodle, I guess we'll call it. And then maybe Maverick1000.com is another good spot.
Well, we'll put those all obviously in the notes. But Yanik, thank you so much for your time. Until the next time, so much love to you, brother. Cheers.
You too, Reed.
Thank you for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed this episode and that you gathered at least one nugget that you can take into your life today. To dive deeper into my work, please visit reperez.com. That's REPEREZ.com. It's a central hub to explore how to work one-on-one with me, to connect with me on Instagram or social media, or you can check out my new book, Your Brand Should Be Gay Even If You're Not, or you can inquire about booking me to speak to your audiences about the power of building a category of one brand, your unique gifts and your unique superpowers. Lean into what sets you apart, and I'll see you next week.